Welcome to our revision presentation on life issues. This focuses mainly around the ideas of the value of human life and the concepts of abortion. A lot of the important things to think about for this topic is the idea of the miracle of life, the idea that life is special and amazing. Now, the idea that a tiny sperm and an egg make a person is quite fantastic. Remember, little wriggly sperm, tiny little egg, they're so small you can't see, but those basically contain the blueprints for a human being. Both religions we've studied, Christians and Muslims, believe that a child is a gift from God, or Allah in the case of Muslims, and it is a blessing. That's why they think that life and children are so important. Both religions also believe in the sanctity of life. That means life is special, precious, holy. This is because God, or Allah, created life. It's that special act of creation, the fact that God or Allah has a direct hand in that construction, that makes all life valuable and special to them. Other groups might believe in the idea of the sanctity of life as in they're special and important, but they obviously wouldn't attach the holy aspect unless they actually were religious believers. Different people have got different ideas about when life begins. Some people, such as Catholics and their type of Christian, believe that it begins at conception. That's when the sperm meets the egg. Some people believe it's when a life is viable. That means that if the baby was born at that moment in time, it could survive outside of the mother's womb. So it has to be a fully developed baby. Although some Muslims believe in the idea of conception, most believe that it's actually a life at the point of ensoulment. That's at 120 days when they actually believe that a soul enters the body. Some people believe it's when it's born. This includes the Jews, even though we haven't studied them, and it's not legally a person until this point. Another one of the big issues for us to think about is the idea of the quality of life. This is how much value, fulfillment, or happiness someone can have. In essence, how much quality they will have in their life. Things that can affect this could be severe disability, whether they're an unwanted child, and whether they have to live in poverty. Some people will argue that it's okay to end a pregnancy if someone's going to have a poor quality of life because of any of these factors. If you can make a quality argument about this, as well as why people shouldn't have abortions, you should be able to get very high marks on this topic. It's also important to consider abortion in the law. In England, Scotland and Wales, a woman can ask for a doctor to grant an abortion under certain circumstances, such as a risk to her life, such as she might die, or she might become seriously hurt by it. Also, if there's a severe risk of physical or mental disability for the child. Also, if there's a risk to the other children that woman has. It's allowed for up to 24 weeks and must be agreed by 2 doctors. This was illegal until 1967. This is very important because before this point people would have had to have an illegal abortion, which is much, much more risky and could end up with women dying in backstreet abortions with unqualified doctors. It's still illegal to have an abortion in Northern Ireland, which is an interesting fact because they are governed by the same government. When thinking about abortion, there's a lot of rights to consider. The rights of the unborn child, should they be allowed to live? Is it murder? The right to choose, is it actually the mother's choice because she's carrying the baby? The right to safety, would it actually endanger the mother if she's carrying the baby, either by medical risk or because people won't want her to have it, such as problems with family or her community? There's the idea of the right to equal opportunity. This brings us back to the idea of quality of life. If someone's going to have a poor quality of life, should they not be allowed to be born? Then there's the idea of father's rights. Should a father have a say in whether or not someone has an abortion? Currently in this country, the answer is no. There's a lot of arguments for abortion. There's the idea of the right to choose. It is the woman's decision. The idea that life doesn't start until the baby's born. The risk to the mother's life should outweigh the value of the baby. If she's going to die, what value does that have? The woman's circumstances. She might not be at the right time in her life. She might have been raped. She might be living in poverty, or she might be more concerned about her career. Adoption is difficult emotionally for a mother. Would it be easier to get rid of a child than to hand one over to someone else? And if it was illegal, dangerous abortions would happen. This would put women at more risk. Some people argue that it's cruel to a disabled child to be allowed to be born and live a life of misery. And there's also the argument of overpopulation. This would be justified if someone personally wanted to get rid of their child, rather than an argument for killing lots of people. There's also the arguments against abortion. It's a separate being from conception. Remember, that's when the sperm hits the egg. That means to have an abortion is murder. The idea that there's depression and guilt that can follow an abortion. Not everybody enjoys the experience. Disabled people can still enjoy life and have a quality of life. Unwanted children could be adopted, providing families who are desperate to have children who can't, with a family. And each person is unique and offers something. The idea that abortion shouldn't be a selfish decision. You should be thinking about the bigger picture rather than just your whims at the time. You may regret it in years to come. And the idea that the UN rights of the child states that protection before and after birth. That means that there's an international convention that thinks that children should have rights even before they're born. These arguments for and against, if developed into P paragraphs, make sure you've got both sides of the argument. You will easily be looking at C or above. So make sure you get your C or above. You've got to drop in what the two religions think. Start those sentences off with the magic words some Christians believe. For this one, such as the idea of the sanctity of life, that means life's precious or sacred. Don't have an abortion. They're created in the image of God. Killing babies would therefore be destroying God's image. Abortion is actually killing, according to Christians, because they believe that life has started. So that's breaking one of the 10 commandments. That comes from the Bible. And God gives everyone a purpose in life before they're born. Some people will accept it in the cases of rape or risk to the mother's life. They ask the question, what's the most loving thing to do? This is the key guiding concept for Christianity on a lot of issues, and is relevant to other topics too. The second religion you can drop in, because if you drop in 2 religions it's going to make you look super smart and get you top grades, is Islam. Key thing, Islam is the name of the religion, Muslims are the people who believe in it. Now, they believe that all human life is a sacred and precious gift from Allah, their God, and anyone who carries out an abortion will suffer in the next life. That's a problem for the doctors who would commit it, which is why Muslim doctors would not want to carry out abortions. Some of them do believe in the point of conception is when life begins. That's the sperm hitting the egg, guys. And some believe in the point of ensoulment at 120 days, when a soul enters the baby. That's most Muslims. They don't believe there's an exception for disability, so they never would agree to an abortion on the grounds of a disabled child. They also believe it should never be for social or economic reasons. This is because Allah will provide. It is His will and His decision when life begins and ends. And on Judgment Day, they believe that the aborted children will ask why they were killed. The final thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the issue of life issues and abortions is the alternatives to abortion. People will argue that you could potentially keep the baby. It is an option, even if it isn't the first thing you might think of in a panic. Adoption, which is important, that's the idea of another person raising the child as if it's their own. Muslims believe blood ties are important, so they would normally foster on a long-term basis rather than adopt, because of their belief in the importance of this. And finally, fostering, which is to be looked after on a temporary basis by someone else's family. As I've said, Muslims believe that this is a better alternative than adoption. Make sure that you mention both religions in your exam answers, develop your P points, and look at how many marks the questions were. Good luck.